That great.
Fantastic. Welcome, everyone. Today is February 19th. This is a meeting of the San Rafael City Council Homeless Subcommittee. Calling the meeting to order. Approval of minutes. Any changes on the minutes? Make a motion.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Carries. We will have public comment following each of the agenda items, but we'll start with open time for public expression. This is anything not on today's agenda. Go ahead. You're not required to say your name, but you're welcome to.
Gregory Andrew, San Rafael Meadows. And my question is regarding the role of this subcommittee. If you could speak for just a moment about its role in advising the city council. And what I'm specifically asking about is if it's possible, likely, or I would request if this subcommittee would perhaps entertain contracts that pertain to homelessness for the city. The city council has had a practice of approving contracts through consent calendar, and some if not many of which have are not subject to open bidding, and certainly not providing public vetting, any opportunity for public comment on any of those contracts, any sort of public vetting of them. And so my question is, I have experience with subcommittees such as the city council having the role of vetting contracts, making recommendations to the governing body, who then does put them on consent calendar and approves them. And not aware that this subcommittee or subcommittees of the city council have that role. So if you could speak to that, I'm going to ask if you could speak to that and see what happens of that, about the role of this subcommittee and recommendations to the city council. Thank you.
Any other public comment? No.
Yeah. No.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the reports I'm getting, there's been an uptick in like lifestyle tickets for people that are unhoused. Some of them are like camping on a sidewalk. People are getting misdemeanor tickets on those, which adds barriers to people getting out of homelessness. It just perpetuates somebody in the system. And so I know there's discretion. Those are kind of wobbler citations, so I'd like to see those be infractions where people can go to community court to try to, get those off the record. So like I said, there's just been an uptick in lifestyle tickets. Just, people, have nowhere else to go. They're getting tickets for open containers, stuff like that. And so also, I know when people move from over to Marydale, I think I've heard there's plans to, open the path back up for the public, Mahone Creek, and then maybe close band camping at Anderson. And so, there's still going to be people unhoused, as we've seen at City Hall. And I know it's got to be balanced, but with residents, there's going to be complaints, there's still going to be people around. So I'd like to see some kind of plan to address that, to where maybe I know there's some areas on the maps that are still allowed for people to camp. And
if you could wrap up, finished your 2 minutes.
Yeah, I'd just like to see those available for people that are unhoused.
Thank you. Thank you. Not seeing any other public comment. There was a question about the subcommittee And I'll hand it over to the acting city manager, but I will say every contract is approved in public and public can always weigh in during the council. So I want to be very clear, this meeting is being recorded and I want to make sure that that narrative is accurate. But if you can go ahead and speak to the role of the subcommittee.
Yeah, sure. So the subcommittee, like all subcommittees, are in some ways advisory to the council. So I'd say broadly defined, there's generally a discussion with subcommittee members on vetting issues that are working their way to the council. What level of detail or degree depends on the issue and the topic, but their fundamental role is to be advisory to the council. There's a certain amount of vetting that goes on. I'm just aware in some committees, I'm not sure, having been here previously, if some of the contracts came to the committee first, just as a heads up. But
Policy.
but the committee doesn't really have, as the council members on the committee don't really have a role in I'd say like the selecting of the vendors. Staff goes through the process consistent with our contracting purchasing policy. It's more of a heads up, focus on the funding. Do we have a funding source, or are we going to be asking the council for supplemental funding? So it's more how we're going to execute the contracts than who we're selecting, if that helps.
Thank you. Okay, we have two items on the agenda. Let's move to the first one. It is the sanctioned camping area update. Where's the update?
All right, I'll kick us off here before I hand it off over to Daniel, but we have, today's meeting, we have a short presentation to cover, just general updates on how the sanctioned camping area is going. Lynn is here, as well as, I'm going to call you Sergeant, but Lieutenant Holm from SRPD to talk about just how things are going out there. And then the second item we'll get into is more of the nitty-gritty policy discussions around the framing of the 350 Marydale project and how that work has been going on. So with that, hand it over to you, Daniel.
Great.
Next slide.
Actually, can we do a quick round of introductions to people at the table? I just realized some of the public might not recognize who is sitting here. So, Wayne, you want to start?
Sure. Wayne Pham, he, him. I joined the city of San Rafael in July last year, and I work in the community service division in the homelessness.
Thank you.
Hi, Paul Namazio, finance director, and currently serving as acting city manager.
Lynn Murphy, mental health liaison, San Rafael Police Department.
Kate Collin, Mayor.
Rachel Kurtz, council member.
Samantha, go ahead.
Oh, I'm Samantha Sargent. I'm a member or a resident of the Meadows.
Alex Holt, lieutenant with the police department.
I'm Dan Cooperman, community services division director.
John Stefanski, assistant city manager.
Jason Saris, homeless advocate and member of the Marin County Lived Experience Advisory.
Gary Nadarisa, director for homelessness with Health and Human Services.
Thank you. Members of the public are welcome to, but you don't have to introduce yourself if you don't want to.
Mariana Nalistad with San Rafael Meadows.
Gregory Andrew from San Rafael Meadows.
Wayne Rayburn, San Rafael Meadows.
Thank you. Sorry, I should have done at the beginning. It's always nice to know who you're in the room with when we're not in the big chambers. We have to do that. Okay, now I'll turn back to Daniel.
And John just covered our agenda for today, so let's get right to it. All right, so a quick update on the sanctioned camping area, or the SCA. So for last calendar year, we averaged just over 49 people. That's why you see 49 to 50, which for the majority of the year, that was full capacity. Halfway through the year, we increased capacity to 54. We keep an extra spot open for the most time, especially in this rain, because we have issues with tents being outside. So having that flexibility is really helpful. As of now, we have 52 people on site. Gary's here from the county. They contract with St. Vincent de Paul for housing-based case management. So there is case management available for everyone on site. And then just to sort of segue into Marydale, we did conduct 2 visits where we just spoke about the interim shelter program at Marydale, got feedback, got thoughts, talked about the transition, and it was pretty much universally positive. We did that prior to like this last onslaught of rain, but just with this weather, especially like in the winter months coming up, people are very excited down at the camp. I will note sort of the one thing that popped up was the continued apprehension around permanent housing vouchers and the lack thereof. So it's something that, has been around now for a while, too long, but that certainly came up during conversation. And then here's just some of the statistics that we have from the sanctioned camping area. So on the left side, you'll see our housing outcomes. So 14 oh God, I just messed up. It's hard to see from up there. 12% have been permanently housed, 14 are in active housing search. And so it's, numbers that we feel good about, but there's certainly room for improvement. I think as we begin this transition over to Marydale, we're looking at more creative and unique ways to create pathways to permanent housing. And then on the
say real quick, I think it's 74%
are in housing search. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Thank you, John. And then on the right side, you'll see client benefit outcomes, which shows that 82% of folks on site either had public benefits or obtained them while living at the SCA. Take a quick break there. Any questions about the sanctioned camping area? I don't know, Lynn, if you want to add anything about the sanctioned camping area.
It's, I think people are feeling frustrated, not with the program itself, but just because people aren't getting housed as quickly as they had been. We were housing on average 10 people a month.
That's amazing.
And that has really dropped because the housing authority is in shortfall and the outlook for long-term funding for vouchers is not looking great. We did get that reprieve that the emergency housing vouchers will stay intact until July 1, 2027. But after that, and people are well aware because letters went out to everyone who has an emergency housing voucher. And the word has spread, like these vouchers are going to go away. So I think, Gary, if you want to talk about, the county response, the goal is to keep people who have been housed within EHV in their housing. We don't want to see people exited after being housed for, years back on the streets.
And that's a federal policy change. Correct. Just be clear, you guys waiting for you to say that.
No,
it's not a local change. It's not a local policy, not even a county policy.
Administration has shifted their funding priorities.
So why where it is? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Did you want to add to that?
Just emergency housing vouchers were given out during the pandemic to assist individuals who became homeless because of the circumstances of the pandemic, losing jobs, losing income, and then losing housing. So Marin had 117 issued. 100% of those were issued to individuals. As you were saying, Mayor, the current federal administration ended the funding over 10 years early for that program. It was supposed to extend so that people could build up their capacity, self-capacity again. At the time that happened, there were only about 93 people still using those vouchers in Marin. Some had successfully transitioned off. What the Housing Authority did was they put those individuals at the top of the Section 8 waiting list of highest priority, ahead of even our existing homeless folks who are on the list, to ensure that none of those people exit their housing back into homelessness. It doesn't relate specifically to the SCA because none of those folks have any of those kind of vouchers. Those refer to people who are already housed, in various circumstances. So priority is continuing to get them to keep them housed. The Housing Authority does believe that with the standard turnover in vouchers, that hopefully by next year, or when they're trying to eke out a little more time of funding with the resources we currently have, that they currently have, but they're hoping that all of those individuals are able to transition to something by that time. So then that'll start opening up things a little bit for our system again.
Is the county able to fund any housing vouchers? Or is it really pretty much 100% federally funded?
The county does fund almost 100 temporary housing, temporary rent support vouchers. We do that through a mix of there's a program with the Richardson Bay Regional Authority funded by former state surplus funds with the RBRA effort there to exit folks from the water with now less than half a dozen remaining. We used ERF funding at Binford Road to do to fund a temporary rent support program there. And there was a former federal emergency rental assistance program where we were able to use federal money there to fund housing vouchers. When that ended, the county picked up the cost until Section 8 vouchers are available. These programs are temporary in nature. Again, folks in temporary rent support programs go to the top of the Section 8 waiting list at this point behind the EHV voucher holders until they can get a Section 8 voucher. So anyone that enters a temporary rent support program has to be Section 8 eligible. So long-term homeless and disabled. But it's a way to continue exiting individuals from the street at a time when, as Lynn was saying, we're in voucher shortfall. So we encourage creativity and thinking around that. And if if that's a program that San Rafael would like to think about with any grant funds that it has or any other supports, we'd be happy to work together on that.
Thank you. That's super helpful. Questions?
I have a question in terms of, so Jonathan's Place, Casa Canal, are there any openings there? I mean, those are county-run facilities in San Rafael, but I'm wondering how much we have ability to get additional people placed there.
So there are occasionally openings at our permanent supportive housing sites like the Arcs, which is South Alicio, or Casa Canal, or others. As you may be aware, our permanent supportive housing sites now are kind of on a spectrum of services. So it goes from like light touch supports and services at like La Casa Buena to very intensive high touch services like at Casa Canal, which is just for individuals with serious mental illness only who are homeless. So depending on where a spot opens up, a client would have to match the criteria of that site, but those vacancies have to be filled using the standard coordinated entry process, which looks at countywide highest need individuals that match the criteria of the site. But occasionally there are turnovers.
And then any updates around Care Court? I mean, that's one that's been coming in the picture, out of the picture, in the picture. Do you have any update on that?
No, I can check in with BHRS and get something back to your committee since they run that program. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm working really closely with the Care Court team. They are awesome.
Great.
They were anticipating something like 5 referrals. I think I don't know the exact number. It is significantly higher than 5 referrals. I can tell you that because we're on the phone or texting, they're looking for such and such a person. We've had quite a few referrals, I would say off the top of my head, in San Rafael. I can think of 6 people, and I'm sure there are more than 6, but it's been a great resource.
And are those people, are those people in Mahone right now?
At the sanction camp? Trying to think, we're not prioritizing. The priority is really the people who are very mentally ill, who are having touches on the justice system. So it could be.
Okay.
Yeah,
no problem.
I would have to look at the list to see.
Yeah,
but
and going back to the pie chart of how many people are looking for housing from those who are currently in Mahone, or is that in everyone?
Yeah, so part of the chart were people who are exited from a home, so the rest are folks who are there.
Okay.
And I would just add, the way our system works is that there's like a 4-step process to housing. Being assigned a housing-based case manager is step 1 in the housing process. So by default, every single person that is assigned a housing-based case manager, that's considered your first housing resource that you have in our system. It's required for you to even apply for a Section 8 voucher. So by default, everyone who is assigned a housing-based case manager is considered on a housing pathway and looking for housing. So, because that's what the case manager primarily works with them on.
And when you say looking for housing, can you, I mean, I know what that means, but can you provide a little bit more background for those in the room about what that actually looks like?
It can be a variety. So in the housing pathway specifically, it can be everything from making sure that the individual has all the documentation that they need. That can be, I lost my driver's license. I don't know where my birth certificate is. I need to ride up to Sacramento to get a copy of it. So all the things that help you get ready for even being able to do that application for Section 8, and then walking through the Section 8 process and becoming eligible, and then actually searching for a unit, moving in, helping with the costs associated there. In parallel, though, housing-based case managers help clients with everything else they need at the time. That could be, I'm interested in working. I'm interested in, I lost my CalFresh card and I can't get food, all the other, social service and behavioral health needs that a client might have.
I think it's almost with language that looking for housing sounds like you're just going on Zillow and looking.
Or you're looking at the paper. Yeah.
And it's so much more. And we need to understand that that is a whole trajectory and a pathway.
We should get a better phrase for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
On a pathway to housing.
On a pathway, right.
Yeah.
So are there other section? I'm just trying to manage the meeting appropriately. Saying, is there more on the update specifically for CSA? Because we could, okay. So before we move on, if there's any public comment on this agenda item? Yes, go ahead, Mr. Andrews.
Gregory Andrews, Centerville Meadows. I hadn't realized there was any voucher program at all before. And so this is kind of news to me. It's good news. So I'm glad to hear about it. And this is an option, an approach that had been suggested last fall when you were considering 350 Marydale. And I'm wondering if, it sounds like it's a stopgap approach. I get that, but I'm wondering if it might be something that you could pursue more vigorously and make it incorporated into as not an alternative to 350 Marydale, but as an addition. Make it a more vigorous part of your program. The second question is, can you explain that 74% again? I didn't quite catch what that meant. Exited, what does that mean? And then my third question is, if you could tell is it ERF? Is that correct? ERF 3 funding. What's how much has been expended? How much is encumbered? How much is left at this point? If you know, it's a question that I had posed before to, it was in an email that I sent back in December, and I'm going to forward it along to you to see if we could get the city's response to that. But what's the status of that grant funding right now? So there were 3 questions there. Thank you very much.
Any other public comment?
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead.
So I know recently there was I think 2 more caseworkers hired for the sanctioned encampment, and I just was wanting to see how many people are actually out of the camp assigned caseworkers, because I think one, that's kind of that's really a most sought after thing for people living outside, is like, if I can get a caseworker. And so I think, making sure that everybody is assigned a caseworker at this point. I know there's quite a bit. That might help with some of the frustration of people feeling like they're not getting housed right away. I know a lot of it's out of our hands. A lot of it's based on the federal government. HUD only issues vouchers when they feel like it's available and stuff like that. But, there's a lot of things that, as Gary was saying, caseworkers can do. And to feel supported, I think is really important for the people out at the camp.
You? Yeah, go ahead and then here, you first.
Hi, Sarah McAvoy. I wanted to, because the prioritization of people that are in temporary situations getting vouchers was brought up, and permanent supportive housing was brought up. And I know that the people that are losing their EHV vouchers are going to kind of get priority with new vouchers that come out. But I also just want to bring up a concern because federal funding cuts to permanent supportive housing, it's going to leave. And yes, that includes me and my child, forced back out onto the streets. And those people are going to take priority after the EHV vouchers over people that are in temporary, whatever encampment situations. And so I would just urge the city, because I know the city bears a lot of the costs of homelessness, to urge the county to step in and keep people housed so that people in temporary situations aren't put on the back burner to all these other things that are preventable.
Go ahead.
Mary Anastas, Centerville Meadows. My question is, how many caseworkers are planned for 350 Marydale? Because clearly that is the linchpin of the whole program. And how many cases do they each have to carry?
Any other questions, comments? Okay, I'll respond. Hold on. Let me just number. We'll go back. I'm so glad you're here because it shows your willingness to learn more. Section 8, we can speak to really short, but definitely we have info on our website about Section 8. It underpins everything. So it was a surprising question to me, but it shows how much we need to do a better job of communicating. So someone could speak briefly to Section 8 because that's a really huge foundational conversation. And then percentages again, if you could talk about the 74, 14, 12, there was confusion about that. ERF status, and then the caseworker numbers at Marydale. And that will be a nice way to then segue into the Marydale agenda item. So however you want to do it.
Yeah, so I'll start and then I'll hand off, I think, to you, Lynn, to speak to the voucher piece. But the larger question about, is this a strategy that the city could look to, expand? And, this is one of the things that comes down to, quite frankly, just dollars and cents. And the city itself is not chartered or responsible for providing social services of that extent. But I know that that's something that the county works on, Gary and his team work on. And as he said at the beginning part of the meeting, that if the city were interested in finding ways to supplement their work, that they have an existing cost sharing program that, should the funding arise or grant opportunities arise, we could expand or look at. Yeah,
we have in the past done that.
So, but I don't know if you want to briefly talk.
So vouchers have been around for, I don't know when the voucher program started.
We're just trying to look it up.
60 probably. Yeah. So this is, it's not like it's not a new program. It's been around, the goal is to get people connected to a voucher, whether that's, there are a variety of different kinds of vouchers. So we're not going to do a deep dive into that. So the goal is always, if somebody is unhoused, to get them into housing. And if that's via a voucher, fantastic, or some other type of program that best fits their needs. And the reason why a transitional housing setup is so important is because the housing process is very complicated, as we briefly mentioned. And so having somebody in a location where we can find them, the case manager can say, we're going to the DMV, I'm going to pick you up at 9:00, I'll be at the gate. That's why it's so important, because when somebody is not in a specific place, they've been moved around, they were at this tent, but that tent got knocked over, somebody stole it. But when they're in, like at the sanctioned camping area, everybody has a number. I'm in A17, so the case manager knows right where to find them. They can pick them up and take them to get their ID, their CalFresh. So it's always in conjunction. It's the campers who will be at Marydale, just like the campers who are at the sanctioned camp. Everybody who is in that program is assigned a case manager. No, because one of our agencies that had case management shut down very abruptly, Downtown Streets team. So that was about 6 case managers who were removed. Each case manager carries a load of 17 clients. So at the Marydale site, we will have, hopefully all of those case management spots have been refilled. So the other agencies are hiring case managers to pick up the caseload that got dropped when Downtown Streets team closed its doors. So everybody will be assigned a case manager.
And just to add on quickly, like the nonprofit sector has been hit very hard. There is a high level of turnover just in general. It's difficult work. It's very little pay. So we do deal with that with our nonprofit partners from time to time, but they keep on refilling those slots. So.
No, I had one comment, observation as I'm getting to speed on this. I just want to point out that, you know, the voucher program and all the housing programs primarily administered via the county. You know, this whole kind of portfolio. The point being is that some of the vouchers are targeted for certain types of clientele, or program type vouchers. But earlier there was that concept of the pathway to housing, and the key is that that pathway is different for different clients. Like there's no one pathway to housing. So the goal is not just to put somebody in housing, but to successfully put somebody from the street into temporary shelter, into supportive housing, and then on the road to self-sustaining. And so it's how do you use the tools and those vouchers to get the best possible outcomes for the population. So it's a complex puzzle, not monolithic as some folks sometimes feel.
And in Marin County since 2017, we have a 93% retention rate. So when somebody moves into housing, 93% have successfully maintained that housing.
Unheard of.
And when the
Beats the
7% that fall out,
Yeah.
they don't get neglected. It's not like, well, you lost your housing, we're going to forget about you. No, they go to a different list for prioritization. It's called Housing Second. And we try to find, all right, what would be the best place? This first place where they were didn't have enough staff on site. We need to find a better fit for what they need. So it's
Can you go ahead and, I was going to just keep going through the questions. Can you go ahead and put up the slide that had the percentages? Let's just keep going through these.
Yeah, so this is over the lifetime where you see 12% permanently housed, 14% have been exited from the site, and 74 are continuing on their pathway to housing. 74%.
Explain what exited means.
Exited means they're no longer a participant of the sanctioned camping area for a variety of reasons.
Meaning they're homeless again. Thank you. Actually, you know what? We're going to go ahead and answer these questions, and if it's not answered, and then we can ask it in the next session. I just want to make sure we get to all of our things. So there was a question about the ERF status, and then you already answered about the caseworkers and numbers, I think.
We'll respond to that. We don't have them off the top of our heads, but we'll respond on the ERF refunding.
Great. Fantastic. Let's move on to the next item, which is a 350 Marydale interim shelter update. Opportunity to provide feedback on the good neighbor policy, code of conduct, conceptual site plan, and future engagement efforts.
Yes, all right. So on to the good code of conduct and good neighbor policy. So this has gotten a lot of feedback. We've had a lot of folks in this room give us feedback personally, which we really appreciate. So some of the main changes since version 1 is one, we combine the documents into a unified of those documents apply for on the site and in the neighborhood. We listed out a single enforcement framework for, if things do not go perfectly, what is the process? And then we also define roles and responsibilities for program participants, shelter operator, or the city and the county, including who responds to different types of issues. If you should talk to staff on site, you should talk to the city, county, et cetera. And then we also got dialed in with our terminology. There's a lot. We say neighbors, participants. That up so it was easier to read. This document that is attached to the agenda is very lengthy. It's one of the lengthiest ones I've ever seen in 15 years of doing this work.
Once again, we excel.
Yeah, so I think, just the overall framework is, we want to have a successful program, number one. Number two, we want to be good neighbors to the Meadows and the rest of San Rafael. And how do we marry that in a residential neighborhood? So we feel pretty good with where it's at. Again, we've gotten a ton of feedback. And I don't think it will ever be perfect for 100% of folks, but I think we've made a lot of progress in getting the majority to feel good about this document. Yeah, next slide. So this was one of the key things that we heard consistently about in terms of the code of conduct and good neighbor policy is safety and security and enforcement. So just to clarify, again, the high level details of this is zero tolerance policy for weapons and, serious negative behavior on site. Like that's very clear, black and white. We just put on our website this week a who do I call guide. I think on a later slide, I actually linked it here as well, with 24/7 contacts and response protocols. Because, if it's 6 a.m. on a Saturday, that's probably a different call than you're making at 11:30 on a Tuesday, right? So that was a lot of feedback we got in terms of like, how do we navigate the city's overall response? I don't always want to call 911. What do? We hear that a lot. So it is on our website. It's the button right under the FAQs for people. So then beyond that, we are excited to have on-site fire EMT team. So that's going to be a team of 2 for, again, to be able to rapidly respond to folks on site and in that neighborhood. We're using that extra space of the extra facilities to be able to incorporate the fire department as well as police. So Lynn and
if I can just add on to that, that is the pilot program that the fire department's running for BLS. And so all of our trainees and their vehicle will be based out there. So they'll be able to provide support to folks participating in the program, but then have easy access to support North San Rafael.
Great. I love that.
And then lastly for this slide, our site operators, both security and operations, have committed to regular site and neighborhood walks. So, we did as with the Meadows neighbors did a walk around the neighborhood, the path, the smart train area. So the folks working on site will be taking a look every day. Next slide. Just wanted to do a quick touch on harm reduction policies. So we did make a change since the last time where alcohol and drug use is prohibited on site. So we do have, and then within our program policies, we have our framework to address any substance use that does affect safety or site operations. I think this is a delicate balance in terms of how this will roll out. But we are committed. That to be said, if folks are intoxicated on site, we will work with them to best resolve.
So I thought I read in here that it's just not in the public, it's not in the public gathering areas.
That's in the latest draft that's attached to this agenda. And so this was a change that came down.
This is relatively new, and it's in response to continued feedback that we've gotten from the community, also in conversation with Chief Spiller on how do we balance harm reduction and how is it written in a policy such that the city isn't expressly condoning the use of those substances in the city.
So I'm confused. Is it this or if it's
going to be this?
Yeah.
So this document is.
We can talk about that more. I think to have override healthcare professionals. None of us, except for you and you, are healthcare professionals. And trauma informed helping first. This is a departure.
That's correct.
This we can put aside. We can talk about it at the council level, but we're not experts.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I also thought, I don't know if it's.
Sorry. I
thought it was alcohol. I think we have to do a deeper dive because alcohol is a legal substance and somebody going to get a warning if they bring a 6-pack of beer into their tiny home?
They could sit outside at La Toscana. I mean, yeah.
I don't know.
And Dr. Warhurst, I mean, so maybe we parking lot this one because we could
Yeah.
spend the whole time talking on it, but I don't feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, I don't
We're
know.
not experts.
No.
So let's keep going. Okay.
Okay, next slide.
Thanks, Mike.
So this is again a little breakdown of the accountability and sort of enforcement program policies around if there are any issues on the site. This is pretty general uniform language that you see from any sort of shelter or transitional housing site. Again, this one is language for minor infractions. But for the most part, our site operators, our case management folks, like we're not, as a city staff, I'm not too worried about this in terms of, the folks who will be at Marydale. But again, to have this written out in our policies and procedures is helpful for everyone. And then this is the follow-up for major infractions. So this is more like life and safety issues, right? Violence. As sort of the main one as the major infraction. Again, we've been, very lucky to not have many issues like this so far in our city. Next slide. So basically, a quick run through. If there is immediate safety intervention needed, step one is, we'll talk to the folks on site, people involved with the incident. Then we'll go do an incident review and determination. We'll talk with all the staff who are involved, all the residents who are involved. And then if, again, it's a serious enough safety related incident, that's what warrants a program exit. And I will just go back. I will just put out this note at the bottom: in very limited circumstances and at the discretion of program leadership in concert with, city and county staff, depending on what the major infraction is, folks could be reassessed for reentry at some point. Again, depending on what the incident is. Okay, and then this is more for the neighborhood or concerns housed residents, but for anyone really, this is our main way of contacting and getting your answers questions. So we have our end homelessness email that's monitored by me and Nguyen here. So that gets responded to during normal business hours. We have phone calls to call. We have SRPD non-emergency, obviously call 911 if there is a real emergency. And then next month, we're gonna be launching on SeeClickFix, another way for folks to report concerns. So if you see, debris related to homeless encampment, stuff like that, instead of just emailing, you'll be able to go into SeeClickFix and then be able to track sort of where the response is from the city, like we have for many other issues within the city. And then here's the link that I mentioned for the who do I call. So it's I think a page and a half more detail in terms of what's on this slide. So again, that is on our website, and we always encourage to reach out if folks have questions or concerns.
Great for businesses too.
Okay.
Oh, you got it.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Internet is unstable.
All right, well, I'll start talking while we figure out our IT issues. So as we mentioned many times, we have a little deficit in terms of what we have in our budget and what's been awarded through the state and the county. So we have a gap of about $4 million to run the program through the looking at everything from state funding, congressional directed spending, other local opportunities. But then we've begun our work to develop a philanthropic campaign to solicit donations. There's been a lot of talk internally. Right now, the anticipated kickoff for fundraising is spring 2026, which is right around the corner. So now that we have these subcommittees monthly, we'll give a further update next month.
And we've had a couple preliminary conversations with the Marin Community Foundation regarding, what does this look like and if there's ways we could partner with them, because they've at least expressed that there is some interest from their donor advised funds to support this kind of thing. And so we're trying to make sure that we're plugging into those opportunities.
Next slide. And then just a brief summary of our community engagement. So we had our October 2025 webinar, December community meeting, January 2026 town hall. And then, as I mentioned late last month, we did a neighborhood walkabout. It was a little cold, but definitely very helpful and illuminating to hear from the neighbors. And then we're going to set up a meeting with some of the folks again right here in early March to discuss further more public facing documents in terms of how the site will be operated and some of the reporting relationships relating to that. Next slide. And I know I'll try and speed through some of this. So here's the preliminary site plan. We displayed this at our last community meeting. It is on our website as well. So you can see there's 65 tiny homes. There's roadway and utility easements, turnouts for the fire truck navigation in case of emergency. We have spot for shower trailer. And then here's the physical brick and mortar buildings. I will point out right now the thinking is we'll use building B for sort of the case management offices. It's in the best shape, but as we work with our consultants determine some of the costs associated with even like a little lipstick to some of the buildings, that might change, but that's our preliminary thinking as of now. So this is what the site will look like when it comes to life. And then just a little update on the project timeline. On Tuesday, the City Council approved contracts with LCA and Swinnerton to assist us in project implementation. This is during winter, so we're in winter. We're continuing our community engagement. We're getting ready to launch that fundraising campaign shortly. And then actually just today, we released the RFP for the affordable housing portion that went out. If you subscribe to our news blast, that went out early this morning. So that's very exciting. Fast forward to spring and summer of this year, we'll release an RFP or RFI for unit construction. So that's actually getting the units delivered, manufactured, put on site. After that's done, we'll bring to council the contract award for a vote. And then, as was mentioned earlier, we're also going to do a reconsideration of our camping ordinance and potential changes as we've done sort of every spring, or at least the last spring. And then, as always, I like to put, we'll continue our community engagement. And then fall is our target date to open 350 Marydale, close the SCA in stages, and then return the Moan path to public use. And that's it. And here's a nice little photo of the interior of a potential tiny home. So I just wanted to end it on a little bright note of sort of what we're aiming for here, and like why we're doing all of this is a far different photo from the inside of the tent of what we have at the SCA.
Fantastic. So I have one procedural question. I don't know if it's for ACM Stansky or for Acting City Manager Maggio. So in terms of process, because I know that the community is getting lots of feedback. I know that the housing first policy, whether it's followed here or not. So how would that happen at the council level? Because that discussion here, it's a bigger discussion than just the folks in this room.
Yeah.
That is something that all the council should weigh in, and they're professionals. I'd want Dr. Moore, who's like, that's a bigger thing. So is this coming, like, how is this being adopted?
So, this is meant to really be an administrative policy for the run of the program, but I think given the interest, to your point, and the need to maybe have a larger conversation with the council, we can certainly get this scheduled to bring back. I don't know, Paul, if there's anything you want to add to that?
Adopt it as a resolution, but maybe it's part of a report out.
It's like an update on the program.
Yeah, so because it'd be helpful to hear from the rest of the council how they feel about the housing first.
With it jumping ahead, I also think it's important to have a here's code of conduct as we open the shelter, and then sort of periodic check-in to see how it's working, because it can be modified or adjusted as you go to meet the needs.
So that's a good point. So wouldn't be a formal action like a resolution. Maybe it's just a discussion item on it. So that was process. I just had two questions and then I'll turn it to you. And this was just a word, and we are not going to all wordsmith together, as fun as that is for all of us to go through this document. But it really does change the tone. And so under the goals of the Good Neighbor policy, the number one is by the entire community. And I don't know about the rest of you all, but my family can't even decide on a dessert. And there's only an entire 4 of us. So that word to me is really problematic. I don't know how we would ever live up to that. I've been doing this work for a long time. No one ever agrees on everything. So I don't care what the word is, but I want the sentiment that this to me reads that everybody's really happy with it. And we have never made a decision in my 20 years that everyone's happy with. I'm talking about number 1 under the goal, the Good Neighbor policy. So that was my question just for staff to address. And then the other, and it's not addressed in here, but I think it's important. So a lot of this, appropriately so, is around the residents and their behavior there. What if we have a situation where folks from outside who aren't there are harassing? I mean, does it go to typical police, just like they would be harassing outside of any type of service? And it has never happened in San Rafael, but I know it happens in other communities. So I'm just curious. That's a protection of the participants. How would we handle that? And do we name that? So it goes both ways. If folks are going in and out and they're having signs they have to walk by or being yelled at, how do we address that? And can we put that in here?
We would respond just like we would anywhere, and it would be to protect the safety of not only the participants, but everybody and everybody's constitutional rights, depending on the particular situation. And in all of those responses, we have a lot of discretion from the time someone decides to call to our dispatcher and call taker deciding whether to recommend a response by SAFE or our officers or the supervisors can respond themselves. But certainly we would respond and evaluate.
Well, I think it's tricky because obviously people have the right to congregate and they have a right to protest. I just worry about harassment of participants. So whatever that is, let's put that in there because we want to recognize that it goes both ways. And I know there have been situations in other parts of Marin. So those are my kind of underlying concepts or comments.
And I want to go, so yes, thank you. Those are really good points. In terms of looking at this as an administrative policy, I want to make sure both from the neighbor side and also from the residents at Marydale, is it a legal document that can be referenced from a legal perspective to challenge either the city or challenge the community, either going back and forth?
Is this a legal document?
As it goes through our process, and maybe that's something you guys could take off and think about, in terms of if it's going to come to the council, we're going to vote it through.
No, we're not. We're not going to do a resolution.
We're not going to do
So it would be only input.
But we call it policy. So when we talk about policy, normally we talk about policy as from a legal perspective. So that's one comment or question sort of around that. And so the other part is, as I read through it, there's some absolute language and there's some subjective language. And I think it would be really beneficial to everyone to either, if we're going to use absolute language, to be really clear what that means. And if it's subjective, potentially defined. So when it says loud music, my loud and somebody else's loud and back to your dessert thing, right? Is really different. And so I think, and it's throughout, and I don't want, like you said, we're not going to go word by word by word, but I started highlighting and I like, what's the level, what's the measure? And then the other one is I would suggest if we could have a list of definitions. Backing up a bit, I know we have a participant code of conduct at Mahone, right? How different is that one to this one? Again, you could take it back, but I'd like to see potentially a side by side and what precipitated the need to make the change, if there is a significant change.
Well, the current code of conduct is a lot briefer. It's 10 expectations. And they're very similar. number one, no violence of any type. No weapons can be brought on site. So this is much more robust and detailed, but the bones are very similar. And the code of conduct is simply a code of conduct. There is no good neighbor policy connected to it.
And so with the full-on detail that's included in this one, is it because that current 10 bullet point one has caused problems?
I mean, I would go so far to say, and when Daniel can talk about this, is this document is attempting to serve multiple purposes, whereas the code of conduct that we have for the sanctioned camping area was really meant for the program participants. But this has now become largely due to the amount of feedback that we've received from the surrounding community, a need for clarity around what are the expectations, what, how is the thing going to be run? And so we're trying to balance, the program piece of it, but also being responsive to the community and being open and clear about, what the expectations are from the city.
I know as a mom and in my neighborhood, my neighbors don't follow these rules. If I gave this to my kids and I cried a little bit, it really didn't work. So I want to make sure we're not making, and I understand, like we need to find what that right mix is and what that right balance is.
Yes.
But I want to make sure that we're trying to facilitate people getting into housing, not make this be so restrictive. I don't know if that's the right word, or limiting that people can't be and live. I mean, but I could tell you my neighbors, if I gave this to my neighbors, they'd be like, no, you can't tell me to do that. So I'm wondering why we're putting the residents at Marydale under such a different set of requirements that I wouldn't put my own neighbor to.
I think it's just in response to community.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand, but I think we also need to question what seems a little bit too far. If you're not willing to ask your own neighbor to do this, why are we asking just at Marydale?
So going back to your previous on the subjective, I think just putting the document that we're tied to current city codes. Because noise ordinance is already defined. I don't want us going in there and doing decibel levels and blah, 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 blah. Pet behavior that's already defined in our code. So just have a sentence in there. That's a really good point. Tied to current city
Some
codes.
of it's like, obviously there's 65 people living in the space gets small. It's over 2 acres, but when you have 65 people, it gets small. So some of the noise, again, it's personal preference on some of that. So that leads to some of the like semi-vague language where it's like, there's so much nuance and gray area. Like it would be lovely if it was black and white, but
Tied to city ordinances, that's very clear.
That's what the policy. So the policy is also then not only for the residents of Marydale, but also the residents of Rafael Meadows.
No, this is this is only for the interim participants.
Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. I wasn't sure. All right.
Okay. So I don't see any other questions or comments that we have. Let's see. Oh, God. Okay, well, we'll just have to go a smidge over.
Okay, not on this. It's different, but it was what was presented.
Well, no, because we didn't need to do public comment. So what's on?
Well, we talked about the campaign. I wanted to ask about the campaign in terms, are we looking to bringing in somebody else to help manage the campaign? Or are we looking to staff to be on the campaign conversation?
Staff at this point, and then we're looking for like a third party one so people can get the tax relief of we're not a tax exempt agency. So that, and then handling some of the back end, right? Like if you're getting 200 checks for $5, sure Paul would not love if there's a lot of
Pennies.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So that's in terms of like the outside help. That's really one of the driving reasons.
And in terms of, there's multiple phases, but initially in terms of the setup, are we looking at organizations like Make It Home for helping to furnish and provide some of that support?
Yes.
We're trying to cover every single base.
Okay,
Yes.
great. And then at some point, we'll set up like we have with Mahone, that volunteer organizations could come in and be able to help when it's appropriate.
Like on the site.
Yeah.
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 For
Okay.
sure.
Okay, great. That's it.
Fantastic. I recognize we're at time, but public comment is always important. If you'd like to comment on this item, now is your opportunity. Yes, Samantha, go ahead.
Question, I'd like to know if your site plan is to scale.
Okay, good question. So I'll take all the questions and then we'll answer.
And if it's based on a certain size cabin.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll go to
Lots
you.
of questions, but the one I think we had proposed that you really separate out the code of conduct for what really is an overall sort of what is the whole community supposed to be doing, so that the participant is a code of conduct. But then all the questions around, how do you report out to the community? I think there's a lot of mixture in that document right now. And if we separated it out to two separate documents, it may be easier to sort of say, we're going to manage the community or the participant from the code of conduct. And then the bigger thing is more about then all the stakeholders around it. And we had sent in a proposal to that.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Yeah, Sarah.
So I just have a couple things. I think like Councilmember Kurtz brought up, like if this code of conduct or whatever it's called is in response to community concerns versus the effectiveness of the existing code of conduct that's in the encampment, is that really appropriate? And two is that is it appropriate to have stricter codes of conduct in this tiny home encampment than are in the Housing First model? Because it's real clear in Welfare and Institution Code, Section 8255B1, which is a core component of the Housing First model, and says tenant screening and selection practices that promote accepting applicants regardless of their sobriety or drug or use of substances, completion of treatment, or participation in services. And the reason why that's a core component is because if you try to force somebody into sobriety, number one, it's going to end up failing. And number two, they're either going to hide it or they're going to do it in unsafe places outside of the encampment so they don't get in trouble, which is going to push it back into the neighborhood. So I think that's something that needs to be taken into account.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, go ahead, Jason.
Okay. Yeah, right here on the introduction, so on the bottom paragraph, day-to-day enforcement of participant behavior is carried out by the shelter operator. Enforcement is a word that, I don't think would be served well. So like if it said like the shelter operator will monitor the rules of conduct each day, might be a better way to put that. Also, when we talk about, aligning with the municipal codes, like the quiet hours are for the shelter is between 9 p.m. and 7 a.m. But I think everybody else resident, quiet, I think you have to be quiet at 10 p.m. And so I'm not sure why it's an hour early, but it should align with the municipal codes. I know, and I want to thank Daniel Cooperman with meeting with the Marin County Lived Experience Advisory Board and giving us an opportunity to offer feedback. We talked about a grievance policy. I did not see it in this, and I thought it was going to be like on the signed contract part, there'd be a grievance policy, but I think
separate grievance policy.
Okay.
Not to cut you off. But
okay, good. So I just want to make sure that that's available to people, and just to reiterate what Sarah said, and what was mentioned earlier, 93% of people that have gone through the Housing First program have remained housed, and these people have been, have been on drugs, and so that practice, I think, should be followed at the shelter. Project.
Anyone else have public comment? Yeah, go ahead, Amber.
Yeah, did I understand you said there were going to be a fire department and the police department on the site?
So just do your, I'm taking notes, so go ahead and do your public comment and then we'll have the staff respond.
And I just noticed that before we were told that we're gonna have a public meeting in February, but I guess now that's been put off to March, which is fine, but I just wanted to verify that. Didn't see a smoking area in where the layout of the thing was. And that's a pretty big concern. And on the tiny homes, are they gonna have heating and air? Because evidently they don't have it now, but I think it would be a good thing for them. And see if on the thing, it's almost like a heater or something, but in the summertime, it's hot down there. And if it's some kind of fan or something to keep them, we don't want them dying of heat in that little tiny home or shed. And that's my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's see. A question about collaborating with Caltrans, Mayor Collin, have you brought this to SMART's attention about collaboration on those properties? I understand that the RFP was just released for the future housing development. That's just a comment. I don't need to respond to that. A question was raised about if there would be any indemnification to the residents area about what happened at 300 Marydale. There was a slip and fall, and that property owner is now sued and raises a lot of concerns for us if that might happen to us, and if there's any potential for indemnification from that kind of incident, and I can elaborate if need be. The site plan that you're working on now, we just extended the contract for that design. If we could continue to have some input on that, would appreciate that. I'd be saying thank you for incorporating our concerns about drug use. I do want to say thank you for reducing what I'm calling the 4 strikes down to 3 strikes. Appreciate that. Regarding this drug use, I just want to remind you or set the context that this site, you selected to put the site in a residential neighborhood with young families, young children, daycare centers, assisted living facilities nearby, and businesses. So there is a lot of concern about this site and the activities that might happen outside of the 4 walls of the site.
Thank you. Your 2 minutes. You just want final thoughts?
That drug use prohibited. The question is, are you going to allow illegal activity on the site? We have to.
End of
That's my question.
public comment. So we had really quickly, and I apologize because I like to have our meetings end on time. This is an important one. The concept just about the site, question scale and the smoking area, just kind of site in general, can answer that. Grievance policy, I think you answered that, but go ahead. Fire department, again, on site, so there's confusion about what's on the site. Public meeting, it's in March. Does that confirm that? Again, going back to the site, heating or air, or just, it could be just resilience, by the way, a hub, it could be just in the building, however you answer that. Question about the pathway. So money's been reprogrammed through TAM for the pathway. That's the extent of that conversation. There's a general question about slip and falls, which is a much longer topic because we get slip and falls throughout the city every single day, but how does it pertain depending on where slip and fall is located? So I don't know if you want to answer that. And then this is my other point. So that was your point. So scales, if we could let's quickly go through those so we can adjourn.
So the site plan is still being refined. Now we have LC under the extended contract, but Samantha, I can get you the scale information on that because it is on the document, but you can see it on the PowerPoint, but it is to scale. And we'll continue to refine it to ensure that we have the smoking areas and the other feedback that we've received. As for whether or not the units are going to be resilient, to your point, that will be a part of when we go out to bid to ensure that the units are going to be able to accommodate folks in our climate.
Fire
department. So that's going to be our basic life BLS service pilot. So the chief said wants to have his folks out there. So there'll be office space for them. In addition, our special operations unit of the police department is going to have an office out there. So Lynn, Sergeant, Cleland is going to be out there. And then I know Daniel is also planning to work out there as well.
Fantastic. The public meeting. So what's been communicated to the community?
Yeah, so this is a not a community-wide meeting, but a neighborhood-specific meeting with the group of neighbors. These three, not exclusive. And we were planning to have that at the end of this month, but pushing it back to early March, where we're going to discuss some of the things that I know Mariana had raised around the public-facing, operations plan and documents. So we're being, again, more clear for the community on how the thing is going to be run.
Yeah, and again, just underscores the importance of figuring out how we haven't updated the council, because with the community input, this conversation, while it is located geographically, it actually has citywide implications. So we want to make sure the conversation is as broad as possible. It's not just a small group that's weighing in on it. And then slip and falls. So you just want to speak just generally to slip and falls? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, this is a
it's a good
conversation
question,
we'll have with the team and also include the city attorneys on it. I think if I hear the comment correctly, we'd want to limit to the maximum extent possible that the site and the site operation provides results in any liability outside of the property. So,
and that's a super slippery slope, because if we were to do slip and fall indemnification, I would do it in front of every single one of our senior living facilities. And I can't even imagine equity in that. So let me just kind of nip that in the bud a little bit.
That said, I agree 100%. That said, that's also an area that we're looking at citywide to just how we're approaching city risk and liability to reduce the.
I just want to make sure, again, it's broad, that we're being fair across the entire city.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Good.
So I feel like we're coming down hot on this one. So sorry about that. Requests for future agenda items. We are meeting monthly. And the agenda will always be posted.
Just if you guys had anything specific you wanted to.
Not, I would say I do, not for next month, or I mean, down the road, just on the wish list. Update on housing authority. And so I'm looking down that, it's a moving target these days. So, and then homeless prevention with a focus on older adults. And I know that there's some new programs with St. Vinny's and doing long-term supportive subsidies. And so, but how the city might want to start looking at that down the road. So we don't have more homeless.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. This meeting is adjourned. 11:14. Sorry, I took an extra 13 minutes of your life, but it was an important topic. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Thanks. Nice to see you.
Thanks. Nice to see you.
Watch.